I am the national leader for technical soil services. That's the soils version of I'm the national soil scientist for NRCS. My primary job is to work with the state soil scientists to provide support for them as our national agronomists provide support for Christy and our other national specialists, Lindsay's here in the room, provide for other state specialists. The other role I play in the soils world is I tend to be the soils person who gets asked to be on committees like this. And so I was one of the who was pulled into the technical committee developing the resource stewardship tool about 3 years ago when we first started these discussions. And I had the good or misfortune of being in DC this week on other business and got a call actually late. What are you doing Wednesday afternoon? How do I answer that? And would you be willing to drive down to the Eastern Shore to help us out? Chris Gross, Chris Gross sent his regrets. He had a death in the family and is traveling. I think hopefully is there now. Was traveling last night to be with his family and in their time of loss. So Chris did. I know Chris. A number of you in this room know Chris. He has a long history here in Maryland, and he did really want to be here. And he wanted me to be sure to let you all know that that he plans to certainly be back next year, and was sorry that he wasn't able to make it. But you do what you got to do, and he's with bigger issues than this kind of stuff. Anyway, what I'm going to try to do today is try to do Chris justice. He did send me his PowerPoint. It's like, okay, you got a PowerPoint, right? Oh yeah, we got a PowerPoint. Okay, fine. So I'm going to try to do Chris justice and Aaron and give you a little overview of this resource stewardship evaluation. We keep changing the acronyms. They changed the acronym on me about 6 months ago, and I've actually kind of backed away from this. I was involved, like I say, a lot of the technical stuff. I've kind of backed away from it recently since they've been doing a lot of pilot testing, and so, they changed the acronym. Nice to know that. The acronym's changed about 6 times. We're NRCS, we do that. So anyway, but be that as it may, let's get the show on the road. So what is this resource stewardship evaluation thing anyway? As we all know, the landscape of conservation, of the environment, of agriculture, of the whole world, while you're doing crop school, the universe of the group here at crop school is changing. It's changed in the last 20 years, it's changed in the last 2 years. And we as an agency continue to try to roll with those changes and continue to do our job as the premier conservation agency in the country. One of those changes is we got fewer people. We've got fewer people, we've got less time. We need to do a better job of employing our resources and employing tools and technologies and decision support systems and whatever your favorite word of how you describe those sorts of things that both help our people do their jobs better, help provide better information to our clients, to those private landowners that we're charged with working with as an agency, that allow us to work better with the private sector. I suspect a number of you in this room are private sector folks, affiliated with crop consultants or otherwise in private business. Help us work better with our colleagues at Extension. And so the resource stewardship thing is, the idea with the resource stewardship was this idea of pairing stewardship indicators and evaluation methods. I've only given this, it's only the second time I'm giving this talk, to look at a core subset of resource concerns and provide a highly visual representation of where a given piece of ground, a given field stands vis-a-vis those resource concerns, allow a grower to get that snapshot of where they are and where they want to go. Just a little sidebar. I know we're sitting in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The confidentiality thing, you guys have legal issues here, I know that. This is the goal of this, is going to be part of the NRCS conservation planning process. And so, the idea is that this information would be under that same umbrella that our conservation plans fall under. Just FYI. So, resource stewardship evaluation, the RSE isn't going to replace conservation planning. This isn't we're not going to do the whole 9 steps of planning and the the whole baby with the bathwater of what we've been doing for the past 70 years. What we're hoping is that this is going to be a tool to help us do conservation planning better. It aligns with a bunch of agency goals and a bunch of larger projects. This whole idea of that conservation planning partnership. How do we do conservation planning better? The Conservation Effects Assessment Project. I know a lot of work's been done here in the USDA watershed with CEAP. That idea of how do we figure out whether conservation practices are doing what we think they're doing. And then this large nebulous thing, and if you talk to NRCS people, they'll run in fear. What we call CDSI, the Conservation Delivery Streamlining Initiative. This is the idea that now a lot of what we do at NRCS is in pieces. And we've got a piece over here that's Russell 2 that does water erosion. We've got another piece over here that's WEPS, which does wind erosion. We've got another piece over here that's with Windows pesticide screening tool that does pest management. We've got another piece over here. This CDSI thing is the grand and glorious umbrella that's going to... If you've been around... I've been involved in CDSI for pushing 10 years now. It's been a year away for 10 years. But we won't go there. But we're not going there. The goal's noble. We still think we still want to try to get there. That's still where we're headed. So what do we see this Resource Stewardship Evaluation tool doing anyway? You can tell it's the last session. I'm trying to make this a little more exciting. I know you guys have been here a long time. It's been a long day. We want to improve communication with growers. It's highly visual, as you'll see in a minute. Try to make some muddy stuff a little clearer. We want to recognize stewardship. We want to provide conservation business. We're kind of known as the bad guys oftentimes, and we're the people to tell you, you're from the growers, and they'll tell you about yield and how you're doing good and you're going to get better yield, and we're the guys. Yeah, but there's this sediment problem. You're not doing that so well. We tend to be the gang that tells you what you're doing wrong, not what you're doing right. And hopefully this tool will provide a way to find that balance between, hey, this is really good, this, maybe not so much. Empowering what's information's better. Manage land. We don't manage land. People manage land. And our job is to get them the information they need to manage land better. If this can help do that, it's great. One of the other things, we're all low on cash. Agencies are, states are, universities are. So we need to maximize our conservation investments. From this, where it's going to do the most good. Okay? There's a lot to pay people, whether that's money to pay to cost share practices. We need to spend that money where it does the most good. And we need to have a systematic way to identify that. Conservation improvements, and then the other thing we're trying to do with resource stewardship is get back to this whole comprehensive planning thing. Basically, that we need to be looking at all those resources. We need to be looking at those resources in an integrated fashion. Not just looking at one thing here and one thing there and one thing over there. I had to, Chris said, I had to put my own picture. I'm not from here, obviously. So help me out. Dave, Jim, Mike Brown. This is Mike Brown's place. This is your beautiful obligatory Chesapeake picture. I actually spent most of my career in Hawaii, so I have my set of obligatory Hawaii pictures. I was going to sneak one in, and Chris told me I couldn't do that, so I didn't. When we talk about improving communication, this is the front piece of the tool. It's meant to be very visual. This is actually from Mike's farm. It's meant to be very visual, easy to see, easy to read, visually appealing. We'll walk through this in a minute, but that idea that we're presenting a nice amount of information, location, that kind of stuff, a summary, pictures, a little more detailed assessment, and then an idea of what you're doing now and what you hope to do. We talk about recognizing stewardship. We'll talk more about how this thing works, but this blue line here is what we've defined, what's been defined as a threshold for what is adequate conservation. And so, bars that go past that line are good. And this provides a way to recognize those people out there who are doing a good job. And whether the private sector wants to reward them for that or not, that's not our job to reward them for that, but there may be incentives for that. Maybe there are some private sector incentives for that. Empowering producers with information. Yeah. What isn't working and what do you need to do to change it? This is this idea, and again, I'll talk more about the details, but the idea of where you are now is the solid box. You notice all these different colors. We played around with colors. We're still working with the PR guy. The outreach people are still fighting. We're still, it's like, okay, guys, tell us which color you want us to use. Greens are nicer, but they don't really show up very well. We'll leave that to the visual artists, guys. Visual artists. But the idea of a dark line is where you are now. A fuzzy line is what you could do. If you did these practices, this is how your situation could improve. So that idea of that, again, this very visual, very easy to understand way to say, hey, you can make a difference on your place. It's yes, maybe you don't look so good now, but there are concrete things you can do that are going to make things better. So how does this thing actually work? And it's really built on sort of these six steps. We're trying to make it an integrated evaluation. We're trying to address a number of resource concerns, not erosion, not just water quality, not just organic matter. So we're trying to address a variety of concerns in an integrated evaluation. We're using a threshold principle. We've used the best information from the literature, from studies, from modeling like CEAP, from on-field studies, to define thresholds, and I'll put up a slide in a minute of what some of those numbers are, of what is an adequate level of conservation to minimize offsite impacts. It uses the same kind of idea of building a cropping system that you're all very familiar with if you've used any of our NRCS tools. Operations, managements and operations. The program then does the analysis and those comparisons. And then we have, as you saw in the previous slides, we have this, what we hope is a fairly easily explainable set of results. When you're using an integrated tool, there's some law that says you have to put up the obligatory messy slide that nobody's actually going to read. And like I said, like I told the last group, this post is going to drive me nuts before I'm done. I feel like I have to walk over here to talk to you guys. Otherwise, you folks back there in the back corner, I haven't seen you all clock. You are still back there. Anyway, the core of this being, ground. It's in place. It sits on a soil, in a climate, in a at a certain topography, certain relief. It's on the floodplain, it's up on the hill, it's on the side slope. We've got a rotation. Somebody's growing something. Again, this came up last session, I'll mention it now so I won't forget. The initial version of this tool is focused on cropland. We're testing it a little bit in pasture, but the major focus is on cropland. We'd like to expand it in the future to other land uses, but you got to start someplace. And one of the mistakes we didn't want to make was we didn't want to, try to build the aircraft carrier. Let's build a dinghy first. Make sure we got a dinghy that floats, and then we'll start building a bigger boat. And then practices. So what are you doing? You're growing some crops. You're growing them a certain way. You've got some practices. Those might be physical practices, structural practices. Those might be management practices. Might be a bit of both. And then those all inform some irrigation, your appliance, your management tests, your habitat issues, and those all feed out into these resource concerns. So how does this interact with, with this, and what kind of erosion situation looking like? What's your water quality, like air quality? All those typical resource concerns that aren't going to surprise anybody. As I mentioned, the goal of this whole idea is to do what we're already doing better, more transparently, more efficiently, more effectively. And so the way Aaron put it in the slide, I'm not sure it's the term I'd use, but it's not my set, was finding the sweet spot, but it's probably as good as any. And that's this idea that, you want to make things simple, but not simplistic. And so that's what we're striving for here is we want to simplify stuff, but we don't want to simplify it to the point that doesn't mean anything. And that's a tough spot to find in our integrated world of time management conservation. And I think we've done all right, but that's why we're doing the pilot tests, is to get some feedback about, is this actually doing what we think it's doing? Starting with screening questions, planning evaluation tools, assessment, design, practice, implementation tools. So trying to collect enough information to make some initial determinations, some initial estimates that can then be further assessed as needed and can inform management. So, we're back a couple slides ago, talked about a number of different things we tried to do with this program. First thing was to set these thresholds. I mentioned these are planning unit specific. Where are you? It matters. I'm not telling anybody what they don't know that soils erode differently. Soils have different susceptibilities to erosion. You got different issues. If you're down here on the Chesapeake Bay floodplain, where it's flatter, where you're 0.001% slope, you got a different set of issues than if you're 150, 100 miles west of here and you're up in the foothills of the mountains. Different issues, different soils, different climate, different topography. So that's all got to be incorporated into the assessment because you're going to have different concerns, different risks. As I mentioned earlier, these thresholds, I'll show you a slide here. I'm going to move back to this side. Growers will have I'm not going to dwell on this slide. If anyone wants to talk, we're happy to talk afterwards. This is a work in progress. We've gone with the best we got. I've worked a lot in the erosion world, mostly in the tropics. Tea is what it is. And we can have a long discussion, preferably over some nice adult beverages, about the ins and outs of tea factors. But it's what we got, and it's what people understand, and it beats nothing. These thresholds for nutrient values are based on best available science. Consultation with the water quality folks. What are those thresholds where we're seeing those off-site effects? Trying to be realistic, but also, we're not want to tell people they're doing great when the pond's green down at the bottom of the hill, and we're telling somebody that they're doing great with nutrients. All that makes us look as like we know what we're talking about. Sediment losses, these sorts of things. Like I say, I don't want to dwell on that, just that we've put a lot of thought into this. And this is still, and again, these are subject to change with better information, more information. One of the tricks with this, and we were talking a little bit in the last session about, one of the tricks with national tools was trying to get this, and we haven't made that decision yet. Right now we're using national thresholds and trying to have one set of thresholds. Is that realistic? Giving it a shot. I see a gentleman here shaking his head. I tend to agree with you, sir. But we had to start someplace. That's why it's a pilot test. But those are the issues that we're trying to work through with pilot tests. Oops. I'm jumping ahead of myself. There we go. The cropland inventory, crops and management is going to look really familiar to any of you who've worked with our NRCS tools. Very similar to current inputs for Russell 2, WEPS, WinPST. Again, that mythical CDSI thing is supposed to make this a one-stop shop so that we're going to have a situation where our folks or our technical service providers can input that information once, and then it's just going to feed all these other tools. That is far more of a programming nightmare, the IT folks are telling us, than one would think it would be intuitively. We're working on it. Analyze the results. I mentioned this. We've settled on this bar chart. That seems to work for people. As I say, the color scheme is still up for debate. This one happens to be blue. I think they settled on green. Is the web tool green? Okay, so I think we settled on green. That was far more debate than you. It's amazing the things you end up discussing when you're in a big national project like this. One of the pieces we added in was we deliberately put these thresholds on the conservative side. We want to be pretty confident that you're doing good, So we put these thresholds a bit on the conservative side. But what we did was we put an override in, at least in the pilot version, where if you got better information, then put that in. And for erosion, for instance, if our simple calculation looks like your risk, that you're at pretty high risk of being above T, and you've got Russell 2 results based on your field, your management system, that show you're well below T. Well, put that in. And that's going to move that bar back into the nice dark green slot. So we don't want to penalize people who have more information. We want to try to provide an assessment, initial assessment, if you don't have that additional information, but if you got it, use it. And so we've got the erosion stuff, Comet Farm for organic matter balance, WinPST for pesticide management, and then various wildlife habitat things and other outside tools that people can put in the results from. Again, this initial screening tool. If you got the better information already, use it. If you don't, this tells you where you need to go get some different information. Like I told the last group, I looked at the slide just now and went, oh, if I think, they sent me the old slideshow, obviously. But we're still working on this, so it's okay. The goal in FY 2016 was to discuss moving forward with a 50-state pilot. And the way we chose to do that was to focus on this, to coordinate with this National Water Quality Initiative. And I expect folks are aware of that. If you're not, it's a big national initiative. It was one watershed per state. I think maybe some states had more than one, but at least one per state. That's a place to start. You got to start someplace. And then supporting state and partner projects, and there's a few logos down there. We've got the private sector increasingly interested. We got Campbell's over there, Field to Market, which is a big private sector consortium that I'll talk about in a bit. NACD is very involved. I'll talk a little bit about their involvement later at the end of the talk. We're seeing the rise of some of these local certifications. It's a Minnesota logo. Oregon has a long program. Their program's been around for, the Food Alliance certification's been around for 25 years, I want to say. So I mean, there are programs out there, and they're growing. This is, you can't read that mentioned in NRCS people are required to put in their talk. It goes with a table you can't read that also has to be in the talk. But this just shows that red dots are all over the map. That means that there are watersheds in every state. Moving on. If Aaron or Chris had been here, you might get a tool demo. I was involved on the development side, not on the implementation side, so you don't get a tool demo. Is that actually what the screen looks like, though? No? Yeah, cool. So this is actually the official screen link. So right now, only available internally to NRCS because, like I say, we are in the pilot phase. So, and Christy will talk a little bit more about that in the case for Maryland here in a bit. I want to take a pause, one so I can get a little glass of water. Aaron Lauster is the lead on this, but he's the guy to contact. He also has the cute little kids. I was joking before. Chris and I have college kids or out of college kids. If we put a picture like that up, that would be 25 years old, and we would never hear the end of it. But Aaron still has little kids who like their pictures in public presentations, so we kept them in. Does anybody have any burning questions that you just need to get off your chest right now? I do want to cover two more topics before I close, and then we'll have some time to discuss afterwards. I want to talk a bit about some of our early pilot testing work in Iowa, and then give Christy a chance to talk a bit about some of the things that are going on here locally. So, does anybody have any just burning questions they need to get off their chest right now, or I'll roll on? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to somebody who's actually tried to do this. The Iowa folks, for whatever reason, they were just lucky, I guess, volunteered to be the first of the guinea pigs. And so they were pilot test 1 2 years ago, a year and a half to 2 years ago now, led by Marty Atkins. Marty's a longtime member of our staff, been in a number of different states, is now in Iowa. As I say, Iowa was phase 1 pilot in 2 counties in 2015, and then they expanded to 3 more counties plus the 2 National Water Quality Initiative watersheds in 2016. So they've got a lot of, really tried to get this out on the ground. They've got a lot of work with a number of producers. And what I want to share with you is Marty provided a slide set, and it just has some comments from 3 different perspectives on these activities. The young gentleman in the upper left-hand corner.
I'll tell you, they have everything to do with that.
Crop consultant. The guy in the NRCS polo shirt is one of our people, district conservationist, and the guy in the office is one of our state staff.
20 years out of
program at the state level.
Year and a half ago. 20 engineers.
Aaron, they've got a centennial farm, been in the family a long time. He's also a crop consultant, works for the local co-op. The reason I bring that up,
On probably for 15, 20 years.
we're developing tools like this, and we think of, he's our guy. I mean, he ought to know this thing backwards and forwards. He's a 3rd generation, 4th generation farmer, doing good stuff. He's a CCA, and his comment was that it brought
Bring people
we think we're on the right track.
information from several
I like him see some things that maybe he hadn't thought of than folks who maybe are even less aware of the breadth of concerns and the breadth of issues. We can hopefully provide them some better information. His comment was that it's not trivial to do this thing. It asks for a fair bit of information. Again, that's an issue with our tools right now, that we don't have them integrated, so you often have to put the same information in different tools. This is a simplified assessment, but if you want a fair assessment, the grower still needs to provide a fair bit of information about, about their crops, about their rotations, about their management practices, about their nutrient management practices, and their pest management practices. And that's not something a lot of people have at their fingertips. And so one of the things we're finding in these pilot test activities is that it requires a fair bit of footwork on our staff and some upfront work on our staff who are working with those growers, those producers, those CCAs to say, hey, yes, I want to work with you on this, but get your files out, get your records out, because we're going to need those. We've tried to put a lot of maps and other visuals in this. And one of the things that this is Iowa, and for those of you familiar with that country, it's like the hill country. It rolls. So you've got a lot of this idea that you've got differential soil loss within a field. They've got a lot of fields that roll in kind of funky ways. And so being able to provide this visual representation of how that differs, of how soil loss differs across the field, is something that he felt was really valuable. Those folks liked the graphics, so we were happy about that. Jeff's the guy who we asked to actually do this and to get this on the ground. And he's still speaking to us, I think, which is good. He's been involved in both pilots, works in one of the big Iowa counties where a lot of these issues, like somewhere near Des Moines, where all that water quality stuff has come down. So and just his first about how it helps the water quality. This right here, and I don't know if I'm getting the sense that this group here at the crop school, a lot of CCAs, this idea that this is something we need to work with CCAs. That's a realization for NRCS over the last 5 to 10 years that our staff are dwindling, our resources are dwindling. If we want to get this on the ground and we want to get things moving forward, we need to leverage that private sector. Extension's got fewer people, we've got fewer people. We all need to work together on this. And if this is a tool that helps bring us together, helps us provide a consistent message to those growers that are working potentially with all of us, that's a good thing.
From an investor perspective.
Again, this idea of new resource concerns, getting the inputs right to get the right results. Getting those nutrient management inputs. That can be a tough one. We all like to think people keep really good records. Some people do, some people not so much. Alan was the guy who was in charge in the state of Iowa. He's also actually one of our national team people. And he's even volunteered to be part of our help desk, so when people like Christy in the second phase pilot test have questions, he's one of the people who's agreed to be on the other end.
Billions of dollars. So to keep myself looking
From a state
data company.
and, we didn't pay him to say this. He thinks it's helping with efficiency and accuracy, it's helping with knowledge. Information's still hard, but once you got the information, it's not bad to run. It's helping our planners evaluate more resource concerns. One of our concerns as an agency has been a kind of a tunnel vision for Farm Bill largely to contracts by a lot of our field staff, and I'm not blaming anybody. You got to get the work done, and there's a lot of work. But we're hoping maybe this can help people, give people a simple, an easier way, a more efficient way to look a little more broadly. Again, just Aaron's illustration. True. I mean, tools like this are many ways that can address how things continue to change in the field. We've gone from this to precision ag. To GPSs on tractors and yield monitors, and it's wild to me. It's amazing. This whole involvement of the private sector is another piece that I think we're all of us in this field are trying to get our heads around. What does that mean? How does that play out? How does that help or hurt or neutral, or how can we leverage that public interest in quote unquote sustainable farming and better farming practices? How can we leverage that interest into getting better management on the ground? Let me just speak briefly, because Marty asked me to, has asked us all to. Marty's one of the main NRCS liaisons to nationally. NACD is National Association of Conservation Districts. I throw acronyms around with impunity. I always try to define my acronyms. I suspect it's familiar to people in the room. NACD is very interested in this. They've been a very strong collaborating partner. One of the things they've been exploring is how the resource evaluation might fit into this whole supply chain sustainability paradigm that seems to be growing. So that's this, field market's probably the best known of the bunch, but there are grower organizations, agribusiness interested, the big foundations, Walton Foundation, Buffett Foundation, Noble Foundation down in Oklahoma. How do we put all that together? Field to Market puts this slide up in every talk they give. I think I saw one of the Field to Market talks, or somebody threw this slide up at the big agronomy meetings last week, and I think it's got another dozen logos on it in the past 6 months or however old this slide is. So this is really catching on with a lot of the private sector. The big message that I was asked to convey is, if you are involved in NACD, if you're interested in NACD involvement, talk to Bill. There's also going to be, NACD has a conference coming up. I'm not sure what the dates are of that. It's coming up here, I think, later in the fall or first thing, or just after Christmas. But there'll be this will be a big topic on the NACD conference. So kind of stay tuned if you're involved or interested in what they're doing. So with that, I'll stop talking. And see, now Christy knows I'm going to put her on the spot because she was here last time. So she's been warned. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Christy to talk a little bit about what they're doing here in Maryland. So
in Maryland, we were kind of involved in the process before the very first company began. Since we're so close to high court, we want that. So when the chief came up with the idea that he wanted to get back to conservation planning and have more technical competency with our conservation, he went to Aaron Lauster and they decided to do the Resource Stewardship Evaluation. So we took the chief to a farm in Frederick County. We went through some of the steps. This was a very early process. And he was very happy with what he saw. He really liked all the information that, came off the farm and how the Resource Stewardship Evaluation really looked at everything that was happening on that farm.
And in some cases, that's already set up today. There's examples of that out there.
she just didn't want. You just didn't want to use the evil spreadsheet version, that's all, yeah.
So we got lucky, we missed that, so that we did not have to do it by paper, by hand. But we were part of the second pilot, which it was then developed into a program. During that pilot, we ran it in 2 counties. We ran it in Kent County here on the Eastern Shore and Frederick County. In the last session, I had the Kent County District Conservationist Nancy Metcalf here, and she spoke a little bit. But I don't know if you mentioned, but they said right now you can run it on cropland and pasture. Those are the only 2 land uses that we can do it on right now. Obviously, in the long term, it'll be all land uses. And then, like Mike said, they wanted to use it in every state, and so they used the National Water Quality Initiative watershed. And so in Maryland, that was the Catoctin watershed, which is in Frederick County. So right now, it's being run on any contracts that we had in that watershed. And we're still in that phase. We don't really have the results. I can tell you from some of the feedback, like he said in the presentation, the producers really like to see the graph because it really shows them the threshold. It shows them where they're at and where they need to get. One nice thing is you can show them, okay, well, if you implement XYZ conservation practices, it will help you exceed the threshold, get closer to meeting it, etc. I know Delaware I'm going to get it wrong. Is it Clearbrook? Okay, that is their watershed currently are doing it. Is that Mike Brown's?
No.
No, okay, that was a different, all right, his was a different. Ziggy, I don't know if you want to say anything about that one, add anything to it?
And we'll really put you,
He's
we'll really put you on the spot at this point.
He's the district conservationist in Delaware.
Hey.
County,
I
Delaware.
don't mind being put on the spot, but has Christy, I want to put it back on you. Have you seen that this is going to be a time saver for your planners to address resource concerns or assessment?
Wow,
Because
you did put me on the spot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what we need to hear.
To be honest,
You know, from what I'm seeing, it's,
right now,
it's
no.
a field by field
Yes.
basis, and all
Yes.
that information has to be put in
It's-
on a field level.
It is. It's very
If you do it by
meticulous.
management unit,
yes, no,
it may help.
right, so it's a field by field evaluation.
And that's the kind of, and that's exactly, and I hope you're keeping track of this kind of feedback, because that's exactly the kind of feedback that we at the national level need to be getting from you guys who are doing the pilots, because, that's why we're piloting it, is to figure out we can talk a great game at the national level, but we need to hear from you guys on the ground and saying, it sounded like a good idea, but here's the nitty gritty of, how it's affecting our workload, how it's, because the goal of this is obviously to help you and your folks do their jobs better, not to give you 16 more things to do that you already got 16 too many things to do. So, I appreciate that.
A couple of the programs or tools that are being used, I know we had trouble with them, like Comment. We put the information in and it just sat there and spun and spun, and it ran for like 14 hours before we ever got an answer. So no, right now it's. I think eventually, once they work through the pilot and get it all worked out and, get more of the tools streamlined as the road we're taking, I think it will help. It's definitely going to get us back to RMS level plans, which is looking at every land use in the whole farm versus, just looking at cropland or just looking at pasture like we do now. So I think that's the huge benefit to it.
Right now, it's
Yep.
yeah, obviously,
It's another thing you got to do, and that's what we understand that, and that's where I mentioned CDSI at the beginning. But one of the things that we're going for, and I think for this to really be successful at the field level, we are going to have it's got to move forward in tandem with these efforts by NRCS to reduce the load on our field folks, where they're entering the same information in 6 different places. And And if this can be a piece and it goes into this tool and then gets spread to different tools, or it can go in a central thing and get divvied out to tools, hopefully we can address that. But we're not there yet, I understand. And like I say, make sure that feedback gets back to our, our pilot test contacts, because that's what we need to hear. Because when we get asked by the chief or by, when the technical team's being asked by the political types, is this ready to go? We need, we need to say, well, no, we don't think it is, because, these field people said A, B, C, and D, and we got to fix that first. So, and thank you again, and thank you and your staff for doing the hard work of piloting it. I don't know if you drew the short straw, or if you got it, if you were voluntold, or how you ended up in it, but we appreciate it. So. Oh, you are? Oh, hey!
We ran the pilot 2 years ago.
You are here, good.
It is data hungry, and it is time consuming, but the output is very valuable. And I think as we do work on it, I think there will be a good need for it, or maybe not need, but as it goes national and folks start using outside the agency, there is value in it. And as long as you are entering good data and you're sitting down and spending the time, it's definitely going to be worthwhile.
I agree.
So are you guys still involved in the second phase too, Craig? Just to, South Jersey. Okay, yeah. No, I heard a rumor you were going to be here, and you're hiding in the back. I'd have put you. See, she was sitting in the front, No, thanks, Craig. Thanks for jumping in.
And here's an example. I give example. Do you think people really want to see your planet data? But what do they want to know? It's like,
No, I appreciate that. Both of you. Thanks for stepping in. That's what but like I say, I'm really glad. I want to thank publicly all of you folks, and especially Christy for helping me out here, because I'm the first person to say I don't. I've been involved on the technical side of this, but I don't know a lot of what's going on with pilot tests. So thanks, folks, for being able to give the audience a bit more perspective, because I just can't speak to those details right now.
Any other questions? Comments?
See, I did sneak my I just have to switch this over. I did sneak my obligatory Pacific Islands picture in here. Chris can live with it.
All right, well, we thank you guys,
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming and sticking around. Whenever you give the last session whenever you give the last session of the day, there's still 30 people in the room. It's much appreciated.